Margaret Mizushima, welcome back to the Rocky Mountain Writer Podcast.
Well, thank you. It's always great to visit with you, Mark.
As it's always great for me to have a chance to catch up with you. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I look back, I think we were last chatted in July of 2020, somewhere in there, right? As the pandemic was starting to get going. And you've been on a few times in the past, which is always such a pleasure to have you here. And I need to start out with a quick story. I mean, it's just, I want to relay the fact that I first met you at a small library. I think it was in Berthoud, Colorado. And I was doing a talk and, you came up to me and we just started chatting. It was clear you were so focused and determined to be, a writer. And this was probably, I don't know, 6-7 years ago, maybe 7 or 8. I'm not even sure. But you have just blown the doors off and come up with, you've just established such a career and such a track record in such a short amount of time. It's fantastic.
Well, thank you. I had great role models to follow up with, and you were one of them, Mark. So it's been really quite a journey.
Well,
it's really fun and a lot of work.
And a lot of work. Yep. And now big changes, and I'll tell you the changes I'd like to talk about and I know about, but maybe you can fill us in on other changes. Two big changes I know about. One is the fact that for the last couple of years, you have been president of our sister organization, Rocky Mountain Mystery Writers of America, which is a affiliate chapter, a regional chapter of the National Mystery Writers of America. You've poured yourself into leading that group during the pandemic in particular, which was no small mountain to climb. Yeah. And for those who follow Margaret around on social media and other things, we know that you are planning a move out of Colorado to the West. So lots going on in your world.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. How are you managing all this? We'll get to the Rocky Mountain Mystery Writers and the move, but just in general, there's a lot of change. Are you doing okay?
Yes, for the most part. There are definitely occasional times where it feels very frightening and very sad about leaving Colorado. My husband and I have lived here in this particular house for 40 years.
Wow.
And so just last week, we were able to settle on a contract for the sale of this house. We have nowhere to go yet, although we're looking every day on the internet. And so I don't know. You could ask me that question any given hour of the day and I'd probably answer it differently. So It's been a whirlwind for sure.
Tell us generally where you're looking to move to.
We are very excited about moving to Sequim, Washington. It's spelled Sequim, and it's on the Olympic Peninsula.
Oh boy.
Just to the north is the Strait of Juan de Fuca. So there's the water right there. And then I think it's about a 17-mile drive to Port Angeles where you can actually hop on a ferry or something and actually go out to the ocean, or you can go across Puget Sound to Seattle. And just to the south of Sequim is the Olympic National Park. So the forest is just beautiful. And the reason we've got our mindset on Sequim is because it's in the rainforest. I mean, it's north of the rainforest, and it's in what's called the rain shadow. And so all the rain dumps in the rainforest, and Sequim itself has an annual rainfall of about 16 or 17 inches a year, which is similar to what we're used to in Fort Collins. And so we feel like hopefully we can, adjust to that climate better than we could where our daughter lives, for example, which is down in the more southern part of the state. And where she lives, she gets 77 inches.
Yeah. Wow.
So we're just not quite sure we're ready for becoming ducks.
Yeah.
But we think this will be really fun, and we'll be within just a few hours of our daughter's house. So
No,
it's time we move closer to family, and so that's our goal.
is your husband Charlie still going to work as a vet?
No, he retired actually December 31st.
Oh, okay.
And
Wow.
so last year, we sold all of our Angus cattle herd. We had sold half of the herd in 2020, and we sold the other half in 2021. Big changes for both of us. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Wow.
And then he retired, and he's in the process of trying to disperse equipment and things like that, and get us
Wow.
ready to go. Hopefully we won't have to have too many moving vans to get ourselves out there.
Yeah.
We
Wow.
have a lot to give away or sell, let me tell you.
Yeah. Wow. Well, one of my favorite weekends and trips ever was to Vancouver Island, and we went to a place called Point No Point. This beautiful set of cabins and a really nice little, I don't know, it's not a resort at all. It's just a nice restaurant and some cabins, but they overlook the Straits of Juan de Fuca. And I was just mesmerized by watching the boats and ships, and just the sheer scale of the whole thing was just magnificent. To think that there was Washington State and out there was the Pacific. It was just, I don't know, there's magical.
It really is. The mountains there are just beautiful. And so I didn't want to give up the mountains. I love the mountains.
Yeah.
So who knows, Maddie and Cole may have to at least have a vacation in the Olympic National Park or something like that.
Yeah, we'll get to Maddie and Cole here in a second. And just a few quick minutes, your characters. I'd love to just also ask you, after running Rocky Mountain Mystery Writers of America, what was that experience like for you? And what was that a kind of, how did you feel passing the baton off to the next regime?
Yeah. Boy, the 2-year stint was really great. The president of the regional chapters are always on the national board. So you're not only on your regional board, but you're also there nationally. And I learned a lot. Oh, I learned so much. And it was really wonderful to have such a strong regional board at the Rocky Mountain chapter, because of course we had to pivot in March of 2020 and go from having our in-person meetings to Zoom only, which we kept for a year and a half. And then I think starting September or October of 2021, we pivoted again and started having hybrid meetings. And so thankfully, we have very strong people who understand tech. For instance, Chris Goff has just been a lifesaver for us. And then we have a tech team established with Rocky Mountain chapter. We're still working today so that we can deliver these hybrid meetings. It's quite complicated, but our in-person meeting is at the Colorado Automobile Dealers Association, and there is a support person there that helps us get everything hooked up. So yeah, those were challenging times, but like I said, we have such a strong board, and so I think we pulled it off.
Yeah, you did. I mean, so you're involved in Rocky Mountain Fiction Writers. You have a steady pace set for your series. And obviously, you just continue to produce novels that do extremely, extremely well for Crooked Lane. And you were running up RMMWA as well. Did you feel a little overwhelmed, or was it manageable during those couple of years?
Oh, I was overwhelmed most of the time.
All right, a truth teller. We have a truth teller on the podcast today, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes, yes. It was not unusual to call for help,
Yeah.
and help was always there. So, yeah, I just felt like I actually had to kind of ask for more time in my series because I knew that we would be trying to move, and I thought actually we would move in 2021. And so I asked for 18 months between book 7 and book 8. And so I was able to get that. And so at this point, my deadline for book 8 is April 1st. And last weekend, I wrote the end in the rough draft.
Wow. Yeah.
So I'm cutting it very close. It's amazing. You can have 12 months or you can have 18 months, and you'll probably wait till, 5 or 6 months before your deadline before you get started, or at least that's the way I function. And so, yeah, I waited too long. I had to really push it.
Yep. Well, and just before we get to Maddie and all the updates with your writing, looking back on our MMWA and all that you did for a sister organization, obviously I know ahead of time if I ask you no regrets, you're going to say absolutely no regrets because you got a lot out of it. But what would your message be to anybody looking to get involved in an organization? And can you just talk about the rewards that you get back for putting yourself through that much steady pace of helping run things?
It's definitely the networking with the other members of, the membership, as well as your fellow board members. It's just been so wonderful. I was on the board actually at the time that you were president of the Rocky Mountain chapter. And actually you recruited me. And so I did the social media back in those days. So I had been on the board for 2.5 or 3 years before I became chapter president. I highly recommend that. If you've got your eye on one of the leadership positions like vice president or president, I think it's great to spend a little bit of time on the board in another position first. Right. But to me, it's the networking, but it's also learning about the ins and outs of an organization like that and being able to influence some of the benefits for the members and being able to at least have the voice of your membership at a national level. And so, sometimes I felt like it didn't always go the way I wanted it to at the national level, but at least we had a voice there and we were able to influence some of the changes that I had hoped would happen while I was there in that 2-year period.
Very good. Excellent. Well, congratulations on a great run. Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I had good leaders to follow in their footsteps. You and Chris Goff set great role models for me.
Oh, well, thanks. And me as well, following others. So yeah, just terrific. And I assume you'll get heavily involved in the writing groups up in the Pacific Northwest to the extent you can anyway.
Yes, I'll have to see because I want to remain affiliated with Rocky Mountain chapter for at least a year to support our new president, who is Lori Lacefield,
Right.
and to also remain on the tech team to support what we need to do for the hybrid meetings and for recording our meetings so we can get them set up on the YouTube channel and things like
Yep.
that. So
Yep.
I'll remain affiliated with this chapter, at least in the beginning, and then we'll just see where it goes.
Right. Very good. Well, let's get to the good stuff. Let's get to Maddie and the series. You have, as I said earlier, just developed such a following. Anybody who wants to go check out, and as I did a few minutes ago before we started chatting, went online and went to that big online retailer we all know so well, and just, all your books get about 75% 5-star reviews, and way higher if you go 5 stars and 4 stars, and you get 1,000+ reviews quickly, and just people just love your book. So tell us, can you give us a sneak peek as to what the title is of the book that you're turning in next month? Can you tell us about that?
It has had a working title since the beginning, which I don't always do with my books, because sometimes I don't even come up with a title until after they're done. But with Hanging Falls, Burning Ridge, and now this 8th book, I started with the title. And this 8th book, my working title is Standing Dead. And it's set in the beetle kill part of the forests here in Colorado. And the first victim is tied, standing up, dead, to one of the dead trees that are still standing in the forest. So it's called Standing Dead.
There you go. Wow. Wow. Well, that's great. And for those who don't know, just give us the overview of your setup, and tell us about Maddie and Cole and the name of your main town. Just lay the land out for us, for those who might not know.
Okay. The name of the fictional town is called Timber Creek. And I put Timber Creek kind of in the area where South Fork, Colorado is, Pagosa Springs, somewhere in that area. I grew up in Saguache, Colorado, and it's a high altitude valley. And so some of Saguache sort of gets put into the books, but I didn't have enough forest around Saguache to actually imitate it completely. So that's why I kind of moved it a little bit south and west, and kind of borrowed Wolf Creek Pass a little bit. So in Timber Creek, they had a problem with drug trafficking through their mountain community. And so in the first book, Killing Trail, that is the main premise, is that they'd had some drug trafficking, and early in that first book, the body of a teenage girl is found, and an injured dog, which is her dog. And so I was able to pull in my 2 main characters with Cole Walker, the veterinarian, who took care of the injured dog and who happens to be the father of one of the teenage girl's friends. And so he knew the girl and became part of the investigation. And then the main character of the book is Maddie Cobb, and she is a canine deputy there for the sheriff's department in Timber Creek County. And she has her dog Robo at her side. In book 1, they are newly paired. They really are just on their first few weeks of working together. And then the series of 7 books that are out so far covers about 1.5 years, because I had to really slow down how many months passed so that Robo wouldn't be too old to function by the end of the series.
Right.
So
right.
by book 7, they've been paired for a year and a half. They're a well-molded team. Maddie enters the series with a lot of baggage and a lot of angst. And it was my goal in the very beginning to have her heal over the series. And so Maddie has been working with a therapist. She's been doing a lot for her post-traumatic stress syndrome that she's had from her childhood. She's unearthing repressed memories. And so that backstory just kind of goes through the whole series. And then of course, Cole is her love interest. He is newly divorced in book 1. So they stay apart for a few books and don't really connect with each other until really book 3, kind of at the end of book 2, but then by book 4, they're more of a couple.
You get a lot of praise online for Maddie's and her backstory and how you have revealed this over time. A lot of praise for how complex her story is and how you brought out a very rough youth. Her youth was not a smooth ride at all, from what I gather. And the other thing you get a lot of praise for is how three-dimensional Robo is as an animal with a real true character on the page. So talk a little bit about Maddie for starters. How deep could you go? Did you know early on that you wanted to go deep into that whole youth issue? Did you have that in the back of your mind when the first book was rolling out?
I did have a lot of it in mind, and actually put quite a bit more of that backstory in book 1 than I ended up with. So I have my editor to thank for slowing me down, and her vision for the series was always at least 3 or 4 books. And so we wanted to just slow that down and let it unfold a little bit more naturally. Maddie doesn't really hear from her long lost brother until book 2, but in my original version of book 1, she heard from him right away. So things just really changed in the editing process. My original Killing Trail book was not very much like what actually went to print. So we worked hard on that.
And you're reaping the rewards of that hard work now by letting that stretch out.
Yeah, thank you. I think that it did really help. And so I appreciate her vision.
Yeah. It is tempting when you're writing your first book, not knowing that there are going to be 7 or 8 more, to get as much as you can in there. But there's something to be said for less is more in some cases.
Yes. The time I hit the end of book 3, I had a talk with my publisher or my acquiring editor. And he mentioned that we were coming to the end of Maddie's backstory. And so we would then progress to how Maddie felt about current situations, and we wouldn't have as much of her backstory, but I still had lots planned for Maddie. And so in Burning Ridge, I brought a character out of her past to be the villain. And that really opened up a whole new backstory for us to explore. By book 8, I plan to answer all those questions that got really started in book 4. And so I'd like to just kind of wrap up that backstory and then make it new for her as we move on to book 9.
Yeah. Wow. All right, let's shift over to an animal. What are your tips, suggestions? How do you make an animal become a character in a book? What have you learned anything along the way you could sort of pass along? Because there might be other writers, and we know there are other writers doing the similar things, particularly dogs.
Yeah. One of the things that has helped me is that I've been a dog watcher my whole life.
Yeah.
I grew up on a cattle ranch. Dogs were my playmates.
Yeah.
And so I became a dog watcher, when I was 4 and 5 years old. I feel like we've always had dogs. My husband being a vet, we've always had 3 to 5 dogs at any one time. And so it's been part of that. It's just very, very helpful to know your behavior of the animal that you want to put in, and to have had that experience with them. The other experience I had was when I was in my 30s. My husband and I decided to train 2 of our dogs in search and rescue. And so we trained with a county group, and I was able to observe all of those dogs and their reactions and how they tracked. Some of them were air scenting dogs. Some of them were ground scenting dogs. We call that tracking, and we call the air scenting trailing through the air. And then some dogs could do both. Actually, our Rottweiler that we took, she was really good at both. And you could observe her switch from one mode to another. So, I had no idea I would someday write a mystery series when we did that, but boy,
Right.
What a valuable experience that has been.
Yep. Wow. Some people who might not be dog people or animal people in general, maybe you'll agree with this, maybe you won't, but might not realize that every single dog is different.
Yeah, I agree totally.
Yeah. It's just amazing. And I was thinking actually yesterday, a friend stopped by and we were talking out front, and one of our 2 dogs came over and sat down, and I just suddenly realized, what a concept, dogs. The fact that they just, there's no other animal in the world that of course, there's a million different breeds, but that just is so seamlessly part of our lives, and just even as social in some cases, comes over to just sit between 2 guys standing around talking. I'm going to sit here and just sort of take this in. It was, it's just like really cool. I don't know. It's just one of those moments. Wow, dogs are cool. Yeah, that's awesome.
And I can't help but believe that on some level that dog was listening to what you 2 were saying, and understanding it. It's amazing, really.
Yeah. So has Robo's character changed? Has he grown? Is there an arc for Robo as well as for Maddie?
Well, I sort of started out with Robo being the perfect dog. So dogs that are patrol dogs don't always have the very social temperament that I gave Robo. However, some of them do, and especially the German Shepherds. But I realize they're in a small percentage, and many of the Dutch Shepherds, Belgian Malinois, some of the other breeds are so much more active and harder to control, really, than some of the German Shepherds. So it just depends on their temperament. So Robo had a lot of stressors in Burning Ridge, and he acted out. But that's because Maddie was kidnapped and taken from their backyard. And so he was without his girl, his handler. And Cole was trying to handle him and try to search for Maddie with him. And so Robo was kind of acting out and things like that. Otherwise, he's pretty much the Lassie type character. Timmy's in the well. I mean, he's pretty much just is very, very good. But I try to make it real in that I have Maddie always on top of him and always making sure he obeys her, because some of my friends that were in law enforcement and had dogs that actually, you know, these high drive male dogs want to take over. And so they had to really make sure that the dog always understood who was boss.
Yeah. Wow. So as you look ahead, well, how far do you look ahead? And is this something that can go on for a dozen, 15, 20 books? Do you have something in mind? Or does the Maddie and Robo Cole story draw to a close at some point in the back of your head and you move on to something else?
I don't know. I have to get moved and
Yeah.
and determine what my writing schedule is going to be like.
Nice question, Mark, but I've got priorities. Don't worry about the books right now.
No, really. I think that my publisher is willing to go forward. Book 8 is the last one under contract right now, but that was because I suggested we hold off on a contract for book 9 until I got moved and we knew, you know, what was going on. So I'm hoping that I always looked forward about 2 books in Maddie's story. And then actually with book 8, decided that, you know, like I said, I'm going to wrap things up. Right now, I have definitely ideas for the social emotional part of the story for book 9, but I don't have an idea yet for the mystery. But that is usually what comes last with me. I'm almost always looking at that social issue that I want to illuminate or that kind of thing first. And then I figure out, okay, what's the mystery that's going to carry that theme for me?
Very good. Will that seem a little strange to you to be writing in Washington State about Colorado? Or do you think Timber Creek is so well established that won't be an issue?
I think because I grew up in that part of the state, you know, there around Wolf Creek Pass, and because most of my hiking took place when I was in my 40s, 50s, early 60s, I'm not actively hiking right now. And so I think that it's established in my mind, and I know the terrain of the story. What I find hard is keeping it fresh. And once you've hit book 8, you know, it's a little hard with Robo's skill set because he is a wonder dog, but you know, he's not everything.
Yeah.
And so I have to have the humans doing part of the investigation too. And there's always something that I need Cole Walker to be able to discover. There's something I need Robo to be able to find that's
right.
evidence or something. But then I need Maddie and my detective Stella Lasasso, who is really a secondary character. I need those two to be able to solve the case and do the work. So it's a little bit tough keeping it fresh.
Yeah, sounds like it. But that's part of the fun of it too, right?
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
That's the challenge. And of course, you can always find a new murder weapon or something different in veterinary medicine that might slip into the crime. So there's usually something out there that'll spring up, and away we go.
Yeah.
I start plotting.
That's great. Well, your fans are waiting, and I think they'd be very disappointed if it doesn't go for at least a couple more books. So that must be, it's good in a way to know that you've got people already waiting. The second that book comes out, their pre-orders are in, and you know, you're going to be pleasing lots and lots of readers out there.
Well, I really appreciate it. I appreciate every person who picks up that book and reads it, let me tell you, or who tunes in to listen to it. I'm always so grateful that people are reading my work. It's a wonderful thing for us authors to know that people want the books.
Well said, and especially given the fact that there's lots and lots of choices out there, and no shortage of books being produced all the time.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
Yep. Very good. Well, Margaret, this has been great. Thank you so much for the rundown of what's up in your busy world, and we wish we could just click our fingers and make it all like you're just instantly settled in Washington State and
thank you.
Already got your bearings and have all your systems down up there. But we just know that the Colorado writing community is going to miss you deeply, and all you've done for us here in Colorado and the Rocky Mountain region. So
well, thank you very much.
Yeah. But as we wrap up this particular episode of the podcast, we always like to give a chance for our guests to celebrate or point a direction toward another book or writer, somebody you'd like to suggest.
There's a new author on the horizon in the canine world, and it's Kathleen Donnelly. She is actually one of my consultants and beta readers. So I'm excited about her debut mystery, which will come out the end of May of this year, 2022. And it's called Chasing Justice. It's going to be out in audiobook as well as paperback and ebook. So it's a book to be looking for if you like canine mysteries.
And also set in Colorado, or at least a fictional town, I think, as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. This dog is paired up with a U.S. Forest Service officer, law enforcement. So.
Well, as Margaret Mizushima leaves a void in Colorado, Kathleen Donnelly's here to take over.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
No, I'm just kidding. There's no void. There is no void. There's room for everybody in the pool, right?
Yeah, that's so true. That's so true. And there are a lot of great canine authors here in Colorado. Barbara Nicholas writes a great story, and Jody Burnett writes a great story. I can't think of others at the moment, but I know they're out there. So
yeah,
just look for them. They're there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Margaret, thank you so much. We'll catch up with you perhaps down the road. We'll just have to see, but best of luck to you.
Well, thank you so much. And I forgot to mention that Standing Dead, or book 8, won't be out in print until March of 2023. So we got a little break in there, and I hope that readers will look for it in March of 2023.
Great. And while we're on that very point, do you happen to have handy a copy of book 7? You can just show the viewers.
Oh, Striking Range.
There we go. There we go.
It's a dark cover because most of it happens at night.
Very good. Well, that's a great way to end. Thank you so much, Margaret.
Well, thank you. It's great to visit with you.